Good morning. Well, happy Friday. So the momentum has slowed some more since last week, and we've got the little narrowest little range there on the weekly chart. We've got a couple little narrow ones there. So as the momentum slows, the question becomes, is it a turn or just a resting period? And just reading YouTube there. So we don't know. I mean, so far it's acting bullishly. It kind of got a little flag pattern going on here on the daily time frame of the futures. So when I look at this and try to answer the question, which we'll know after it's done, I mean whether it's a turn or a resting period, it is a little flag pattern. But historically, you don't get flag patterns after such a bullish reversal like this. It typically happens after a big momentum move. And the concept behind a flag pattern is that it creates a support area after a void has been created. And that's obviously bullish to be able to do that, to create support rather than pull back to a reference point of support. But I think we're going to have to wait until next week. We'll see what the day ends, but to see whether this continues higher, can it push through that big level of 4,400, or do we move back down? And so assuming that we do close with a relatively narrow range on the weekly chart, the idea behind a narrow range bar in an uptrend is that it's relatively easy to break a prior bar's low, which is the beginning of a minor correction. To do the damage to a weekly time frame would take something of significance to the downside back into this base. So we don't know if that's going to happen, but looking at the daily time frame, since this has made a new high, this pivot low here becomes our reference point of major support. So a break and a close below that violates the uptrend. And after everything that we do is built on a thought process which comes from the chart. And this relatively long period of consolidation, a couple of months or so long, and the reversals and all of that's being bullish, suggests it should continue higher. Honestly, we have to put our lines in the sand to say, hey, what it says right now is changing on a smaller time frame, and always happens on smaller time frames and then evolves into larger time frames as to whether this is going to correct further or not. So this concept of a flag pattern happening after such a downside, relatively major reversal, historically really it shouldn't happen, I should say. I shouldn't say it doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen because it had this little resting period, correction, and back up, and it should get going. And we'll see if that happens next week. Hourly charts, you can see the sideways consolidation correcting, and this initial breakdown and recovery and that retail news. So a little bit of a bullish reaction to that. The 5 minutes in an uptrend, resistance isn't that far away. So there's no tradable void here that makes this attractive as an intraday trade. And, part of the commentary this week has been, kind of going nowhere. And we haven't gone anywhere. Getting back to the little narrow range bar. Now, SPX, I would say 4,400 has some premium. It isn't that far away. I would go there. And on the downside, things are relatively tight because the ranges are tight. It's not like we got these wide ranges where one of these strikes, couldn't be hit without too far a movement, which increases the risk of that actually happening. And with the leverage that these have, you got to decide, do you really want to go there? So, again, 4,400 and 1 second. Yeah, 43.25 has some premium. So again, it's not that far away. This is a big open interest. It held yesterday, and holding does not mean, you know, pinpoint to the number, which, so much of technical analysis, based on what I'll call the dark side of technical analysis, points to that type of thinking. With exactness of, whether it's fib levels or any other type of analysis like that. But so it just poked through it a little bit and sprung back up and, buying the dip. And that's, bullish when you get this kind of little downside shakeouts. So, we always want to get as far away as possible. And then should this go to the downside, we've got unfilled gap, we got this congestion area down here. So decent defense, so to speak. And if this goes up, there isn't going to be much premium down here if it continues up in the morning. So then you have to decide. And 43.75 is another relatively large open interest. So if it should get up there, you can get above 4,400. And I would think, and everything's about thought process and thinking, I would think that would be a no-brainer today. Right? 43.30 is below yesterday's low. True, but it's in an uptrend, McGraw, and so we always got to make decisions based on even this broke the low, and that was again 3 days going sideways in a break. That's a short-term bearish event, but it's happening within an uptrend, and our thought process is that yes, that's short-term bearish. The hourly chart rolled over. Higher time frames are in uptrends, and we're supposed to get some type of red bar ignored or buying showing up and what have you. 43.75 is where we will open. If those go in the money, we could rip. Well, I guess we'll see. Right? We go back and look at what's actually happening. I don't know about ripping. This is obviously a big reference point here, and the market's going nowhere. It's options expiration that has the potential to drive things. So again, picking off points intraday for these credit spreads is pretty key. So as they go up and reach a level, do you get an intraday reversal on the 5-minute chart, some kind of shock pattern where it breaks out and comes back in again, where you can go against that? No, I don't see anything as being a no-brainer here. All right. NQs, a little baby topping tail bar, multiple bars up. And so even though this is in an uptrend, it's up multiple weeks. It's been moving up a lot. So this resting period, if it continues to be a resting period, is bullish. And unless it violates some relatively significant support level, which in this case, on a short-term basis, would be next week, this week's low, that opens up the door to some retracement. Right now, things are pretty tight. Because you thought on selling 43.30 because the strong is open, we shouldn't be down 50% on the day. That's okay. All right. So every trading plan, intraday type of thought process, right, is just that, right? It's thoughts based on what we see in our analysis, whether that's multiple time frames, open interest on options, and so on. And then we place a trade and we see what happens. And so on the Russell here, which is down a whole bunch, broke these prior lows and beginning to hold here, I kind of like this from a day trading point of view. Even though this is in a downtrend, I like the fact that this on the hourly chart has a pattern that it's exhausted itself as it's gotten closer to this support area here to the left and gotten above these pivot highs. So as far as trading the minis here, this looks like a much better opportunity right here, comparing to, this, which is nasty break and grinding up into this void here, having a much larger, or significant type of a bottoming pattern intraday. I like it. Dow. Going nowhere. It's showing relative strength, but can it get through 35,000? I guess we're going to see. And this weekly chart with this type of reversal going sideways here, just considering symmetry of a pattern, meaning the left side is relatively the same or equal to, the right side is equal to the left side. Sometimes that plays out, but this bottoming tail bar, which the symmetry part of the thought process would suggest more of a consolidation. Now, on the weekly time frame, this is what we call a downside shakeout and a 180 reversal, and that's bullish. So while we've got these short-term concerns about, things on a short-term basis, narrowing ranges and momentum, the long term still looks higher, even though it's been going up, which, after the Corona thing seems like forever. And from a longer term perspective, other than, what I'll call this kind of giant fake out, going up since 2009. I guess this, in retrospect, kind of was enough of a correction to take care of all of that. And the only thing that matters at this point is what's going on here and our daily time frame, and what's in the past there. At this point, my thought process is irrelevant. All righty. Interest. Well, let's go look at oil. It's correcting, going sideways here. Not much going on there. Still bullish long term. Gold, stall there at those converging moving averages. So far at the top of the wide range bar. Silver, question is, can it play catch up? Certainly doesn't look like it right now, unless we get some type of bullish reversal here. And Bitcoin, just dead. And I mentioned yesterday that while this is in a downtrend, it's below all the moving averages. These type of quiet, creeping kind of moves can, there's a higher, just probability, I guess, based on historical patterns of getting a shakeout or, a fake out type of thing. So I'd rather wait for some type of meaningful event. And just because this is trending down here, it doesn't mean, you couldn't get a nice green bar to the upside. And I spoke about that earlier in the week, or, do we get a red bar to the downside? And right now, weekly, daily tells me just stand aside. And interest rates up here a little bit. And so the markets, I think, like that. The fact that they're not continuing to go lower, they have trended down here. The dailies are in a downtrend, and just based on bullish news, whether it's retail sales or economic blah blah blah, interest rates are supposed to go up as there's an increase for a demand for money in a strengthening economy. So they're at the 10 years at the 200 there, technical reference point. We'll see if they can get turned around, breaking below here, and set an alert. If they break below here, I don't think the market's going to care for that. 5-year inching back up, kind of things kind of standoff here, with the interest rate thing where this spiked up and the markets came down. The 3 month, still holding up here. The turn, which is a measure of what the markets think. What is the Fed going to do? And so the markets think that it's they're going to increase, which could be a year from now, but the opinion has shifted from down, down, down in the beginning of the turn there. And an additional fly in the ointment of the bullish case is the transports. So interest rates going down, and they're stable, and transports going, inching down like this, and this bottoming tail bar didn't follow through. Set an alert below that bottoming tail bar and above the high of that bottoming tail bar. And from the bullish point of view, we'd like to see these transports get turned around and move back up again. Going back down is going to be a little bit of a bearish sign, and that's more intermediate term, really nothing to do with today unless they break. But we see the airlines, which stabilized, they couldn't get turned around. And interestingly, everything's interesting, as far as the economic thoughts, it's like, what's up with the casinos? If everything's getting better, why aren't people going back to Vegas and having a good time? So I just looked at this. I was looking at early in the week for a possible trade after this bottoming tail bar that it could pop back up again, and it didn't happen. So, when the markets are losing momentum and things are going nowhere, we look in a lot of more places looking for a key piece of information to guide us, and we still don't really have that definitively yet. So for now, we'll see where today goes. All yours, Dan.
Morning. Yeah, to me it looks like the crack cocaine party is still on. I wasn't watching the news yesterday, but I read in the paper today that Yellen, and then we also know that Powell was talking before Congress yesterday for 2 days, but Yellen comes out and says, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, we're going to have high inflation. Yep, get ready. It's going to get worse." So I don't know if that caused the intraday sell-off or whatever, but here we go again, gapping over yesterday's high. So the crack cocaine party is still alive and well. We talked for a long time yesterday. We went back to the Corona low and the spiders. I showed you exactly the day the Fed announced its bond buying program, which was the dead low of the move from then. And every single dip is bottom. So it makes it difficult and frustrating for us technical patterns when you kind of like have to adjust our bias of, man, it's that's an ugly dip and there's no pattern, but it ain't going down anymore. So yeah, go ahead and enter. But we still look higher here to me. I said the diamonds, I would love them to go sideways a little bit more, and then the weekly is a kind of a reverse head and shoulders. So we're gapping here 350. Look at that. We're threatening the week's high. All right. Anyway, we're pretty light on inventory, believe it or not. And the square here had news. We have a call spread on that. The 250s though, so it's still far away, but nevertheless, a gap against us here to yesterday's high. I'll keep an eye on that. Oliver asking about Amazon. Hey, Luis, your drop down, please. Yes, he's asking about his Amazon bearish. Well, is it bearish? The daily's neutral. I mean, it's still holding from this pivot to this pivot. It's still holding the upper 40% of that move. So even though bar by bar analysis is bearish, had a little breakout failure there on the topping tail. The 15-minute chart you can see here into the close, red, green, red, green, red, green, and now we're gapping over that. So for day trading, it's bullish. But swing trading, there's no great pattern. Looking at the other things, Apple. Apple. Um, there's no pattern here, gap and resistance. Today's 0 DTE, so I'll be looking for some of those, obviously. Facebook, same, no pattern, but it's bounced more than Amazon into this void. Netflix is just flat, so that's relative weakness compared to the other FANGs. Tesla up, so Tesla might be a zero put through. I don't know, McGraw, but as always, we'll wait 10, 15 minutes, see what the broader market's doing, see which one we like the best. But that's too early to tell. Oh, let's look at some gappers. SGOC, 13 bucks. No pattern on the daily, but I don't know. It's not a tier one. BAC, I just heard Joe Kernan saying before they went on a commercial that BAC is going to allow some type of trading in Bitcoin. Whether that's the reason it's up, I have zero idea, nor do I care. There's no pattern. Bitcoin down 130 bucks, so had no effect on that. EJ bearish gap here, 26 bucks. So 30-minute low. 30-minute low. This looks like a short. EJH looks recent IPO. Square we talked about. John's mentioning Myrna. Yeah, Myrna is getting added to the S&P 500. Remember we talked about it this day? A gap reversal, then a 1, 2, 3. That was a bullish pattern right there. ALV gap in a 90-50. That's a bearish gap. And then look, kind of looks like an ADR almost. Is it auto live? I don't like the way it trades. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. Lizzie, gap in a 644. It's a bullish gap, but no pattern. But that one might be worth watching. See if it can set up for a day trade. Cal, 21 bucks. Let's see this base here. Okay, so it's not gapping under this base. Ooh, that's an ugly gap. 15. Wow, when you have to go to a weekly or monthly chart to see the data, that's a nasty gap. Look at that. I see nothing over here at $16. Oh yeah, that's what happens when you're trading bios, particularly the ones that they're a 1 or 2 or 3 trick pony and they got their whole business model into something. AT&T, what a dead animal this is. But I think they had earnings. Mondelez was on our list from yesterday. I see that popping here pre-market. We also had SBAC on our list yesterday. That looks great over the highs. Breakout. Hey, Lewis, where you're typing to me, if you can change it to all panelists and attendees, but we already talked about both of those. We have call spreads on Square and Dash. AETH 319, big gap. This is what we call a buy setup. Nice blast off pullback to minor support. So that might be worth watching on a pullback. I'll keep that one. XELA. Day trade 30-minute high, maybe, TJ. Intel in the news. This thing has been such a dog relative to, oh, that's it. Yeah, if it's a toy, then definitely watch it. All right, let me put it down here, bottom right. Intel has been such a dog in the semi space, and now they're in the news saying they might buy a new company for $30 billion. When you become a dinosaur like that and you don't know how to grow anymore, that's really your only option is to merge or buy a growth company that will teach you how to grow and innovate, Walgreens had earnings. That's strange. I don't see any gap on Walgreens. When, well, when you say trying to find support, John, I'm not quite sure what that means. It's just a bounce on a downtrend. BANF, it had earnings. Can't see where you're gapping. We'll come back. BBCT, no pattern. These are a couple earnings stocks here. No pattern. AA, gapping up. No patterns, gap and resistance. AOUT. Ooh, that's an ugly gap. An ugly gap under a wide range bullish igniting bar, but it had earnings, so I wouldn't mess with that. ALK. Now, the airlines have been beaten up, and this is not a quality W bottom at all, but it's a retest at the 200. Maybe it'll take a while. Pre-gap disappeared. Yep, sure did. That's why I look at pre-market charts here. See, it was gapping over this base, and then in the last whatever minutes, got slammed back down. No pattern. CCI. CCI, this was along with AMT and SBAC, same industry, all three of them. I set an alarm on BLL. Mine hasn't gone off yet for some reason, but yeah, BLL looks fantastic thing. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put that in a window on my other computer. Yeah, BLL. Yeah, looks fantastic. Q's strong, and the other three pulling in here a little bit. So I'm not gonna, the Q's have, for the last week or so, just been acting opposite of the broader markets. Let's look at XELA coming in here. Look at this dead animal, CPOP. Now, we have the MT lives on bottoming patterns. Does anyone think this is bottoming? My answer is I have no friggin' idea. Momentum's slowing, but it's in a nasty downtrend with no potent reversal. Otley here, this was the short, the short player was going after them yesterday. BLL, yeah, you know what? Let's just buy 5-minute high. It looks great. Yeah, I like BLM thing. Stop. Have to get way down here. 83.54.